going to talk about science, quantum physics, and prayer, and how that relates to the Bible. So this is part 3 for those who weren't here for 1 and 2. I am going to do a quick bringing it together so we can move on to part 3. So for those who were here for 1 and 2, just bear with me a little bit, especially in quantum physics. It's not something that somebody hears and understands and gets it and says, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay? Because it might not. Quantum physics is pretty wild. But I think what's really interesting is how it ties in with the Bible. Okay? And I think that's going to be very fascinating. So, what is quantum physics? Quickly, it started back in the early part of the 1900s. Guys like Albert Einstein came across something that they didn't think would be possible. Up to then, Newtonian physics was the thing, where everything was kind of measured and predictable. But then along comes the subatomic world of atoms. And one of the great discoveries they made, which did not fit the Newtonian principle of physics, was the subatomic particles. That means those that make up the atom. Just in case you didn't know, you can't see them. They discovered that, this is pretty wild, that when a person, any person, looks at them. Now right now you're looking at subatomic particles, but you don't know, do you? You can't see them. But they're out there. But even back in the early 1900s, they had machinery to look at the atom, and they noticed that the subatomic particles, when you looked at them, because of your energy, the energy coming from you, it changed them from a wave pattern to particles all the time. It's a wave pattern. This is something that you can't see. So imagine that every time you're looking at something, things are changing, but you can't see them. But the subatomic particles change from a wave to a particle. So because of you looking at it, okay? And it's all kinds of experiments. I'm not getting into them. Some of you out here actually know them. They're fascinating experiments. That's just kind of like a real quick primer on quantum physics. Now, and again, Newtonian physics would have said that can't be possible. Albert Einstein, this is back in the 1930s, they discovered this. Some of us are just hearing this now for the first time, right? The first time, and you're going, what? This sounds crazy, this stuff. What? Is that possible? Albert Einstein called it spooky science. Now imagine, back in the 1930s, 1920s, move ahead over half a century later, all the experiments that have been done since then, quite a few. And I'm going to talk about some of them. One of them is from a book I got here. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And another one I'm going to use is called The Heart Math Solution. Dr. Dispenza references this one, so I'm going to bring them all together. So again, let's move from Albert Einstein up to today, around 2010. They started doing experiments, and they were saying that you influence the quantum field. Because of your energy, you can influence things. All right? And one of the experiments they used, I think it was 2010, was prayer. Imagine that, prayer. That if you pray, they had all kinds of scenarios, but the one that worked the best was when a person prayed. Oh, and by the way, they said you pray to the greater consciousness. That's science, okay? These are science books, they're not religious books. So they refer to God as the greater consciousness. That when you pray, the chances of having something successful, because that's the purpose you're praying, to have a different outcome. But when you pray, you have to have your heart and your head lined up. In other words, you have to believe, you have to have faith. Your head cannot be saying, oh, that's not possible, I don't think that's possible. Well, I'll do it anyway. When that happens, they discover that the prayer doesn't get answered too well. Now, not only do you need that, they discovered that besides your heart and your head being lined up, you need to have emotion attached to it and feelings. And the prayer has to be, it can't be wishy-washy. You have to know exactly what you want. You have to know exactly what you want. And you have to have faith for it. And when all those ingredients lined up, and you put it out there, they say you put it out into the quantum field. That's what Dr. Dispenza here from his book says. You put it out into the quantum field, you let it go. You don't start worrying about it. You let it go, and as he said, let the greater consciousness work on it, and it'll come back to you. Now, how it comes back to you, according to the book, because you have emotion attached to it, because you have energy attached to it, because you have feelings attached to this prayer that's going out, he says it is a magnetic attraction that brings your answer back to you. So that's why you need the emotion attached to it. It just can't be, oh, well, God, if you feel like, if it's your will, that's a classic one. Don't use that one. You have to know exactly what you want and go for it. Now, if you want to know, I also, besides reading it in the book, the stuff in the back of the book that no one likes to look at, where did this author get that information? So I'm going in the back. So I'm researching his research to see if it's accurate, piggybacking it up. And the prayer thing came from, I think it came from Europe, from Britain. The interesting thing about prayer. Now, that was just one experiment. Okay, now what does that have? You're going to see now, let's jump to the Bible. And I think you're going to be amazed that Jesus, he must have known all about quantum physics, because when I read over these miracles, and I'm going to throw a few of them out at you, and you're going to see exactly what Dr. Dispenza is talking about. Not close. Exactly. That these people got their miracles because they did exactly what the quantum physics said. It's just totally mind-boggling. Some of these I talked about before. For those who have Bibles and want to follow along, if you want to look at Mark 9:17, it says, a man once went to Jesus for some help with his son. And the guy says, teacher, he calls out to Jesus, I brought my son to you so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit. And in verse 22, he challenged Jesus, saying, have mercy on us and help us if you can. This is the Father talking to Jesus. When the Father pleaded for compassion, now watch what Jesus did. Jesus threw the responsibility back on him, saying, anything is possible if a person believes. Anything. Don't ever forget that. Anything is possible. Oops, what was mine? Anything is possible for a person who believes. Now, I think you can relate to this next one. The guy says, I do believe, but help me with my unbelief. Now think about that. What the heck does that mean? I do believe, but help me with my unbelief. In other words, he believed here in his heart, but in his head, he couldn't, the head gets in the way so much, you couldn't see how that would be possible. His logic, your logic and reasoning is limited. recognize that. Well, I don't think you can get over yourself, and you need to do that if you're going to believe that prayers get an answer. Because you're dealing with a much higher power, much higher than your logic and your reason. So the guy, I do believe, but help me with my unbelief. Finally, now at that point, now listen to this, at that point, Jesus can't help him. Jesus is God, and he can do everything, can't he? There's nothing he can't do. Wrong. When he was in his hometown, very few miracles could he perform. Why? Because his hometown people said, oh, that's the carpenter's son. Oh, that's the carpenter's son. They lacked the faith to believe that Jesus could pull off the miracles. And very few did he do. So Jesus needs us. We need him. It's a relationship. That's why it's not a religion, folks. It's a relationship. And you know that a relationship takes more than one person, doesn't it? It takes two people. It takes two. That puts a lot of responsibility on who? Us. It puts a lot of responsibility on us. Okay, but we've been given the tools. So let's go back to this guy. I believe, but help me with my unbelief. Finally, the man broke down in tears and cried out, I do believe, but help me with my unbelief. He was believing in his heart, but having trouble with his head. In the end of the story, when the boy cried out in faith, when the father cried out in faith, Lord, I believe. He finally believed, and he cried out. At that point, Jesus healed the boy. Jump to Matthew 8. Matthew 8:5. A story that many of you heard before. Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. Now notice, this example, not every prayer, you can pray for others. These first two are about someone praying for someone else, interceding. It doesn't just have to be about you, it can be for somebody else. Jesus said, I will come and heal him. I'll go to your house. But the centurion said, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. But listen to this. The centurion is calling the shots, not Jesus. Watch this. The centurion says, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. Who said that? Did Jesus? No, the centurion had a clear desire. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he went after it. Just like quantum physics says. You have to know what you want, you have to have a sound mind, a sound heart, and very clear of what you want, and emotion attached to it. Jesus marveled. He marveled. He said, surely I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. Verse 13, then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and now listen, this is Jesus speaking, as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that same hour. Now be clear and understand, it was the two of them. It wasn't just Jesus, it wasn't just the centurion, it was the two of them in faith. Okay? Now let's go to Matthew 9:18. While he spoke, this is Jesus, these things to them, a ruler came and worshipped him, saying, my daughter has just died. Come and lay your hands on her, and she will live. Now notice, the ruler is telling Jesus, if you come to my house and lay hands on my daughter, she will live. Who's calling the shots then? The person. So when you pray, know what you want. Go after it. Expect it. Expect it. Faith. Faith. How important is faith? faith is the only thing that pleases God. That's the only thing that will make the relationship is faith. So, my daughter just died. Come and lay your hands on her and she will live. So Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. Now this next part, he's on his way to the ruler's house where the girl is dead. This next one, a lot of people know this next one. And suddenly, and there's a crowd, a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment. Now imagine this, the woman 12 years has been trying to fix this, failure after failure after failure, and nothing works. The doctors can't help her. I think she was a little depressed after 12 years. 12 years. But she mustered up faith. And listen to what she said. If I can only touch his garment, I shall be made well. She had to believe that in her heart. She had to believe that in her head. I'm sure there was emotions and feelings attached to that. Now, she touched his garment. Again, who's calling the shots here? The woman with the issue of blood. But when Jesus turned around, he saw her. He said, "Be of good cheer, daughter. Your faith has made you well." Your faith in what? Your faith in him. Your faith in him. That's what made her well. And the woman was made well from that hour. When Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the noisy crowd, he said to them, "Make room, for the girl is not dead but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. The crowd ridiculed him. See, there were musicians in there. I know musicians. They can be pretty tough. So they were kind of, "You're right, yeah, you're going to raise her from the dead, sure, right." Now listen to what happens. Jesus got them out of the house. Why? They're bad energy. He needed everybody on board, in sync. Head lined up with heart. He got them out of the house. He didn't want them interfering with what he wanted to do, and that is raise this girl from the dead. And he went and took her by the hand, and the girl arose, and the report of this went out in all the land. Now this is all in like kind of one day, this here. And when Jesus departed, he left there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, "Son of David, have mercy on us." And when he had come into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, listen to what Jesus said, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" What's Jesus doing right there? He's testing what? Their faith. Is their head and heart lined up for this to work? This relationship between Jesus and these 2 blind men. They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, let it be to you," and their eyes opened. Notice he didn't say, "According to my greatness, because I am God." He said, "According to your faith, let it be to you," and their eyes opened. All these miracles involve Jesus testing their faith, asking them, making sure they're ready. Are they ready? Are you ready? Do you have your head lined up with your heart? Do you believe? Do you have the faith to believe? Okay, so let's see. Is there any others I want to throw out there? The next thing I want to do is it's kind of brought you up to date there. How long did that take? A long time. For those who have a Bible, let's open it up to another fascinating story, John 11:38. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just a part of it. 11:38. This is the story story of Lazarus. Everybody knows the story of Lazarus. He raised him from the dead, right? Okay, let's get the backstory, because that's pretty cool. 11:38, is that right? Yeah. That's not the time. Not yet. I might need glasses for it. So, quick story of Lazarus. Jesus was hanging outside town about 40 minutes, and Mary and Martha were the sisters of Lazarus, and he was dying, and they went out, they sent messengers out to Jesus that Lazarus is dying, can you come and heal him? And Jesus never came, and Lazarus died, and the girls were confused, Mary and Martha. Why didn't he come? He could have healed him, and the friends that were in the house, we don't always understand things, and they didn't understand. They were very close to Jesus. They loved him. They had a really close relationship. So, Jesus comes back into town, and we're going to take it from 11:38, and he comes up to the tomb. He asks them, where's he buried? And so, he goes up to the tomb. Now remember, Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, were very close to Jesus. They knew who he was. All right? Now, listen to this. This is cool. 11:38. Then Jesus, he's at the tomb, and the stone is in front of the. Boy, you guys look funny with these glasses on. He comes up to the place where Lazarus is buried, and they put a big stone over the cave. That's how they protected them. Now, when they say stone, I should probably say boulder. It's more like a boulder. So then Jesus, again, groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, now watch this, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to Jesus, okay? They're going to tell him something he doesn't already know. Lord, by this time there is a stench. Good logic and reasoning, right? For he has been dead 4 days. What is she telling Jesus? What is she saying at this point? Read into that a little bit. Listen to what Jesus says. Listen to what he says. This is something you can read over real quickly, because the exciting part, him being risen from the dead, that's the exciting part. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Jesus read her veil, her heart. He knew there was a problem right here. Who wasn't on board? Now think about that. Martha and Mary loved Jesus. In a close relationship. They knew who he was. They're human, just like all of us. And her head got in the way. Her head used logic and reason. Well, that can't happen. Tried that before and it didn't work. It's not going to work. Notice Jesus addressed that right away. It was kind of subtle, wasn't it? Lazarus been in the tomb 4 days, he's going to smell. That sounds harmless to us, doesn't it? Jesus picked up on that right away. Because that was a seed of doubt and unbelief coming from her as to what Jesus could do. And he addressed that firmly. Now, somewhere between that last sentence I wrote and the next one, Martha, I know, got back on board. We can all slip. We can all have our head interfere with things. That's normal. When that happens, recognize it and correct it. That's not who you are. Listen to the next line. Then they took away the stone. Okay? That stone was not going to be taken away until Martha was on board. Just like Jesus got rid of those musicians that were in the ruler's house, so he could do the part that Jesus does, he needed Martha on board. And there was a small crowd around there too. They were all friends of the family. They were on board. They had to be on board. It's not just Jesus. It's not just you. It's two of you. It's a relationship based on faith. So I know Martha had to get on board. That's why the stone was then rolled away. And the rest of it is history, right? He calls him out, and then Lazarus comes out. But you know what's interesting about that story? This is kind of a sideline. He raises Lazarus from the dead. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, find this out. Guess what they would do? This was like the coup d'etat for Jesus. Once he did this one, his next step was going to the cross. Because at that point, the Pharisees are going like, oh my gosh, we got to shut him up. The Romans are going to find out, and they're going to come down harder on us. So they wanted to shut Jesus up, and they wanted to shut Lazarus up too, because they know he would be blabbing his mouth, causing trouble. They plotted to kill Lazarus. Did they ever kill him? The Bible never says. Imagine that, guys. He rose from the dead. For all I know, he could have been killed the next week. Stoned. We don't know that. But the religious leaders were after Lazarus as well. And of course, you know what happened to Jesus. Not long after that. Okay, so now I want to, before I jump off this story, there is something important I want to bring up here. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was laying. And Jesus, now listen to this, I'm going to go slowly here. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, now Jesus lifted up his eyes. What do you think he was doing before he lifted up his eyes? What do you think he was doing before he lifted up his eyes? And said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. What do you think he was doing? I'm thinking he was praying silently. And then he lifted up his eyes. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Which brings up this question. Can you pray? Now let's go back to quantum physics quickly. It says you need to have a heart and a head lined up in agreement, and you have to have emotions, feelings attached to it. Can you pray quietly? Silently? Would that work? Can you have feelings and thoughts lined up without expressing it verbally? Will it work? Let's find out. Apparently right here, Jesus just did that. He lifted his eyes. He must have been praying quietly, although it's not written what he said. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. It doesn't say what he spoke before that, so he must have been reading quietly. What does quantum physics say about that? One of my friends said, you know, in Star Wars, how many have seen Star Wars? Raise your hand. How many have seen Star Wars? So you know what I'm talking about. There's some people who have not seen Star Wars. No, you've never seen Star Wars? Yeah, okay. They remind me of, you know, Yoda. That funny looking character. He always closed his eyes and moved his lips, you know, praying to something. What did he pray to? The Force? The Force or something? He did it silently. But what does quantum physics say about it? And then we'll go back to the Bible. Will that work quietly? That'd be kind of good to know, wouldn't it? You know, I think a lot of us pray quietly sometimes. So, this comes from the Dr. Dispenza book, but it comes from, he got it from here, Heart Math Solution. This is pretty interesting. I'm just going to read it out of here because that way I won't butcher it up. Cellular biologist Dr. Rain conceived of a series of experiments to test a healer's ability to affect a biological system. Since DNA is more stable than substances such as cells or bacterial cultures, he decided to have healers hold test tubes containing DNA. This study took place at the HeartMath Research Center in California. Of course it's California, right? Then the folks there have conducted extraordinary research in the areas of emotion and heart-brain interaction. And let me jump in. They said when we have negative emotions, such as anger and fear, our heart rhythms become erratic and disorganized. In contrast, positive emotions, love and joy, for instance, produce highly ordered, coherent patterns that HeartMath researchers refer to as heart coherence. Now, in Dr. Rain's experiment, he first studied a group of 10 individuals who were well practiced in using the techniques of HeartMath to build this heart-focused coherence. They applied the techniques to produce strong, elevated feelings such as love and appreciation. Then for 2 minutes, they held vials containing DNA samples suspended in special solution water, deionized water. When those samples were analyzed, no statistically significant changes had occurred. A second group of trained participants did the same thing. Now listen to this. But instead of just creating positive emotions like love and appreciation, they simultaneously held an intention, a purpose, a thought. They knew what they wanted, just like we need to do in the prayer. To either wind or unwind the strands of DNA. This group produced statistically significant changes in the conformation shape of the DNA samples. In some cases, the DNA was wound or unwound as much as 25%. The third group of trained subjects held a clear intent to change the DNA, but they were instructed not to enter into a positive state of mind. In other words, they were only using thought intention to affect the matter. The results, no changes. No changes. So only change, and again, this is just like with prayer. The only time the change took place is when they knew exactly what they wanted and they had elevated emotion attached to it. Their heart and head were lined up. All those ingredients. Only when subjects held heightened emotions and clear objectives in alignment were they able to produce the intended effect. Same as when we pray. An intentional thought needs an energizer, a catalyst, and that energy is an elevated emotion. Heart and mind working together, feelings and thoughts unified into a state of being. What the HeartMath experiment demonstrates is that the quantum field doesn't respond simply. Now listen to this, is a great line. The quantum field doesn't simply respond to our wishes, our emotional requests. It doesn't just respond to our aims, our thoughts. It only responds when those two are aligned and coherent. That is, when they are broadcasting the same signal. When we combine an elevated emotion with an open heart and a conscious intention with clear thought, we signal the field to respond in amazing ways. Now this is a great line. The quantum field responds not to what we want. It responds to who we are being. Who we are being. The energy that we're sending out to God. Science calls it the greater consciousness. The relationship with God. The two of us. Together, we think and we feel, what we think and feel produces a state of being which generates an electromagnetic signature that influences every atom in our world. Okay, and this all started back with Einstein, in the early part of the 1900s, when he observed the subatomic world where the particles that make up the atom were in a wave state, but when they looked at it, it changed to a particle. Just looking at it changed it. With no thought, it just changed it. Your energy was enough to change the subatomic world. And then they asked the question, what are you broadcasting consciously or unconsciously? What are you sending out into the quantum field on a daily basis? What's also interesting about the science book is they recognize the importance of love. And this particular author, Joe Dispenza, comes to a conclusion that the greater consciousness is nothing short of being pure love. I think that's pretty fascinating. That they care that much, the greater consciousness, as he calls it, cares that much for us. And his deduction is, it has to be pure love. He made all that available, and that's what Jesus did. He made all that available to us. It's done, it's finished. It's up to us to do what? To access it. Let's go back to silent prayers again, because I don't want to leave that alone, because a lot of us, I think, do pray silently, and you might want to know, well, is that as good as or not? So I'm going to go to another story in the first book of, I don't know if it's the first book or the second book. First book of Samuel. And this story about Hannah. And Hannah was, and they got names in here that I can't pronounce. Hannah was married to this guy, I'll just call him this guy. And he had two wives. And the one wife, Peninnah, she had some children, but Hannah couldn't have them. And so Peninnah was ridiculing Hannah because she couldn't have the children, making fun of her, giving her a hard time. And Hannah started getting really, really, really depressed. And I'm going to read from first book of Samuel 1:6. And her rival, her rival is the other wife, also provoked her severely to make her miserable because the Lord had closed her womb. So it was year by year, and she went up to the house of the Lord, and she being provoked by her. And Hannah wept and cried, and then she decided not to eat. She's not going to eat anymore. She's that depressed. Her husband said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah arose after that, after they finished, and she started eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now, Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed to the Lord, and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maid servant, and remember me, and not forget. Now, you see that? She's putting out a prayer. And she's very clear what she wants. There's no question about that. She's very precise. Does she have emotion attached to it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of emotion. She's believing in her heart and her head. Your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child. Then I will give him to the Lord. You know, she's calling out all the terms. She's dictating all the terms to the Lord. And basically the boy will serve the Lord for the rest of his life. Now, and it happened as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli is the head priest, he watched her mouth. He's watching her mouth. He's watching her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore, Eli, the head priest, thought, she's drunk. She must have been drinking. That's what he says. So Eli said to her, how long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you. That almost sounds Pennsylvania Dutch, doesn't it? Put your wine away from you. Put your wine away. We'll talk further. Anyway, Hannah said, but Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. In other words, she was speaking quietly. Okay. Was she successful? Was her prayers heard? Yep, she had a son, and this book is named after him, Samuel. That's pretty cool. So the point is, can you pray silently? You absolutely can. And I think one of the verses that really nails it for us, if you go to Thessalonians 5:7, perhaps the best verse. It says, 5:17, Thessalonians 5:17. It says, pray without ceasing. So to pray like that, obviously, cannot mean you're praying out loud all the time. That would be impossible. Rather, it means we are in a constant state of God consciousness, where you take every thought captive to you and bring every situation, every plan, every fear or concern before His throne. Unceasing prayer. It will include prayers that are spoken, whispered, shouted, prayers that are sung, music. I've heard is the greatest form of prayer. There's something about music. And some of you know that there's some power to music. And they say it's the highest form of prayer. I just think of Paul and Silas when they were in prison. Remember that? They were chained up. They were chained up, and what did they do? They started singing. And not only did they start singing, they had their head and heart lined up. And they changed who they were. And what happened? The jail fell apart. An earthquake came, and they were released. So prayer can be silent. As we direct our thoughts, praise, petitions, supplications, and thanksgiving to God. Praying quietly works. We're going to stop there today. I'm running out of time, and I just want to conclude by saying I believe our prayer life would be enhanced, I'm saying all of us, including me, if we follow the examples that were given here in the Bible and in quantum physics. Because I think they just line up perfectly. That your faith, your energy plays a huge role in the relationship with God. It also underscores, that importance of the relationship. And I'm hoping that from looking at it from a different point of view, a different angle, a science angle, that it helps enhance that. It helps enhance the Bible. This is the science and religion that hasn't always gotten along. I mean, you won't hear this in too many churches, what you're hearing today, because science is sometimes a bad word. And then in the science world, they don't usually talk about God too much. Like Joe Dispenza's book here, it's the greater consciousness. You won't hear Jesus' name very rarely. The two of them seem to be oil and water. Is that the combination? They don't seem to go together too well. People get offended. Church people, we bring up, but not this group. This is a sophisticated group. I can tell, well-learned, educated, And so you're not offended by me bringing the science into it. Okay. And I think the most important thing to remember is when you pray, you have to have the faith. That's the only way to please God. The reason we were put on this planet is to have a relationship with Him. How do you have a relationship with Him? By faith only. It's by faith only. And that's why these ingredients are lining up the heart and the head and the emotion, the feelings attached to it. Go to enhancing